back with the aforementioned Aditi Kinkhabwala, one of my favorite people in this business.
Aww.
Now, Aditi, listen, I really want you to explain your path to this moment, because I have to say that it's not a usual path for somebody to work in sports TV, to have gone on your path, which includes the Wall Street Journal and includes other things. You've got to, for people who see you on TV, I want them to know how you got there.
Well, it was probably bucking everything that my parents wanted me to do, right? Is that step number one? So, Peter, you and I met, I'd like to say 5 years ago, but it was actually more like 20 years ago when I was a student at Cornell, and I was an intern, a summer intern at Sports Illustrated. You, of course, were I don't think that Paul Zimmerman was still there. So you were the senior NFL.
He was there, but he had been diminished. He was mostly working for the website at that time.
Okay, so you were the senior NFL genius, legend, everything, the preeminent expert, and I was a lowly intern, and that's how we met. And I was an American Studies major at Cornell. I was supposed to go to law school, and a series of crazy circumstances the final week before I graduated led to me instead accepting a job as a high school football writer at the San Antonio Express-News in Texas. And initially, Peter,
I gotta ask you, what did your parents say?
My mother was horrified. Remember, I am the daughter of Indian immigrants, of a chemical engineer who went to the best school on the planet, to a former NASA physicist who was a math professor at Rutgers. I was born in New York City. I grew up in central New Jersey. I had just graduated with an Ivy League diploma that cost a lot of money, and I was about to go cover high school football. So my mother, you know how it is with Indian moms, they want to be able to say, oh yeah, my daughter's a doctor, or my daughter's making $1 gazillion at a hedge fund or something like that. But my father, to his credit, my father said he thought it would be very, very good for me to get away for a little bit and to live on my own and live differently and explore a different part of the world. And initially, when I went down there, Peter, it was really a lark. I thought, let me go for 1 year, go do something different, and then I will apply to law school. And, sort of like the wily part of my brain thought, it'll just make me a better law school applicant. How many people are applying to law school after being a sports writer at a newspaper? The issue was that I went down there and I completely fell in love with the craft of journalism, with the art of telling a story, with the idea of every single day being different, and sort of having license to ask a million questions. My nature has always been to want to know more. And whereas before it just meant I was nosy, now it was sort of technically my job to be nosy.
Fantastic.
So isn't it right? Isn't it fascinating?
I love that.
I have two very, very nosy children, and they come by it very honestly, and I refuse to dial it down. I think that an insatiable curiosity is only going to serve you well in life. And so
can I just tell you one very quick thing?
Yeah, of course.
Christmas dinner this year were with my daughter and her family out in Berkeley, California, and the subject of one relative comes up. Well, I don't really know what's going on there. And I just, let's just leave that alone. I said, you give me 10 minutes. I will find out everything. I'll know everything within 10 minutes. Dad, don't you dare do that. Don't do it. So I'm not going to do it, but I'm just telling you, I could do it.
Yeah, but Peter, why don't you tell your daughter there is an art to doing it the right way, and that we can be charming, and it's not necessarily obnoxious if you have a practice skill, right?
Yeah. But that is such a great it's such a great story about the way this business works, because many times, like I wrote this the other day in my column. When I took a bus ride with John Madden in 1990 for SI. We went from the Bay Area to his apartment at the Dakota in New York, and 3.5 days on a bus with him. And at the end of it, I go into the office. In those days, we went into the office.
Right.
And I went into the office, and one of my editors said to me, "So what's Madden really like?" And I it was about to be a 10-paragraph answer, but my first words were, "He's very curious." And that is, in essence, what somebody, I believe, who's good at his job in the communication business is.
Right.
John Madden had 100 things he was interested in. He was a very literate man. He loved John Steinbeck. There was so much about him that was different than what people would normally think. But my whole feeling is, if you're curious and you're in this business, you're going to go a long way.
Peter, I'm telling you that when I met you, I was, the 20-year-old kid, basically. And now we've come so far that it's the young people that sort of come to me and ask for advice or how I'm in this position. And the number one thing that I always say to everyone, don't be afraid to ask a question and then ask another one. And I really, truly feel, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off right there.
No. So we only have 15 minutes, so I got to get into a few other things, even though.
Okay, so I'll tell it really quickly. So I was at the San Antonio Express News.
Yeah.
I was supposed to go to law school. I fell in love with the job. The guy that hired me in San Antonio then went to the Bergen Record. He hired me to come back to the Bergen Record, which, was in the New York market and closer to home. I covered Rutgers, Greg Schiano. That was his first tenure there. I covered women's basketball with Vivian Stringer. They went to the national title game. I covered football, men's basketball. Then I went to the Wall Street Journal, where we did go into the newsroom. And I was on television one day for 4 minutes prior to the NFC title game between the Giants, the New York Giants, and the San Francisco 49ers. And off of those 4 minutes, I was offered a job at the NFL Network. And I was horrible when I started, Peter, because I was a writer. I was used to writing 1,500 words, and the way that words taste really mattered. And when you're on television, talking in 30 seconds is a completely different endeavor. Yeah. But now here I am, 10 years in. I've never been at any one job this long.
Fantastic. Okay, so I've seen you. I saw you Sunday in Baltimore. You're covering the Ravens and the Rams, and then on Monday you're covering the Steelers and the Browns. I want to focus two specific things about that game and sort of the future.
Okay.
Give me the highlight for you, the Ben Roethlisberger highlight from being at the stadium, from being in the stadium, and from seeing his last home game at Heinz Field.
Okay, so Peter, you've been to Heinz Field a gazillion times. You know what that fan base is like. You know what the fervor is there. I have covered just about every game at Heinz Field over the course of the last 10 years. I've been to 5 playoff games at Heinz Field. I was there for the Immaculate Extension, that amazing Antonio Brown reach past 3 Ravens, all of it. I have never, ever, ever felt an electricity or an energy like I did Monday night at Heinz Field. The way that people were so invested in what happened. And I'll tell you what else is different about that. I've been on the field. I'm fortunate to have been on the field at, I believe it's 10 Super Bowls. This was different because it was personal. I don't know that there's another city that feels it strongly about its professional athletes the way that Pittsburgh does. I mean, if you are the franchise quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers for 18 years, if you have grown up, if you have gone from that young punk kid who self-admittedly made a lot of mistakes to turn into a married father of 3, people in Pittsburgh feel that Ben Roethlisberger is a member of their family. Right. And so last night was 65,000 people very, very personally lauding one person. And even at a Super Bowl, you don't see that. A Super Bowl is not about one individual. Last night was about one individual, not only from the stands, but even on the field. You saw in the Steelers, a team that's been racked by such inconsistency this year, Peter, it felt as if every single individual athlete, whether it was rookie running back Najee Harris and his 188 rushing yards, or it was potential defensive player of the year TJ Watt and his 4 sacks, every single one of them felt so charged and so responsible to send Ben Roethlisberger off into the sunset with a W in the best possible way in a moment of this kind. And you think, a year ago, the last game at Heinz Field was a playoff game between the Browns and the Steelers. There wasn't but anybody in the stands, and Maurkice Pouncey, who's also had an absolutely tremendous career, 11 years with the Steelers, a gazillion Pro Bowls. He left in the worst possible way. He left sitting on the bench next to Ben Roethlisberger, who shed a tear for Pouncey. And I don't think you could have written a better script for Roethlisberger. Maybe if he'd played a little bit of a better game, maybe if he'd thrown for 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. But Ben Roethlisberger said yesterday that it was ugly, but his whole career has been about winning ugly, and it was about the win. And for him, the one thing that always mattered the most was getting the W. And it's hard to argue with that just because he's never been the guy that really put up the gaudy numbers. The gaudy numbers he has are because of longevity more than anything else. He wasn't Drew Brees. He wasn't Phillip Rivers in that way. He was the guy that kind of embodied what Pittsburgh was, that you do what you need to do. And so it just, again, I'll say it again, there was an electricity, there was an energy, there was an atmosphere. I mean, even Mike Tomlin, even hardened Mike Tomlin, who never gives in to the maudlin or the emotion, said that in his 15 years, he's never been in an atmosphere like that. And so when we talk about forever moments as kind of observers, paid observers, that's going to be one of them, Peter, that I'll probably remember forever.
Where do the Steelers go right now? Do you have a gut feeling of their future at quarterback?
I think they try to find a veteran bridge, quite frankly. I don't think that there is a future franchise quarterback in the draft as we sit here right now. And the 2 quarterbacks on the roster right now, Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins, neither has shown to be the answer or shown to be the future. Mason Rudolph has had plenty of opportunity to show exactly who he is. You look at the Steelers sort of teetering on the edge of making the playoffs. Well, Mason Rudolph got to start this year, Peter, against the then winless Detroit Lions. And all he could muster was a tie.
Yeah, it was not pretty.
Yeah. So you think if the Steelers had just won that one game, where would they be right now? Well, they'd be in playoff position. It would be completely different. And so Mason Rudolph's not the answer. Dwayne Haskins is not the answer. There's almost assuredly not an answer in the draft. And so do the Steelers try to kind of bridge? Do they try to get a guy that, perhaps behind a very strong run game and what they hope is a really good defense can still obviously keep them in contention in some way? And do they get to the point where they find their next franchise quarterback?
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting because I've been trying to put myself in GM Kevin Colbert's shoes, and I keep thinking most people would say that Colbert is not the kind of guy who's going to trade 3 ones for Rodgers or a Wilson. And I get that, but I'm not sure there's really a book right now on Kevin Colbert, especially after he traded a 1 for a safety 3 years ago or whatever it was when they went and got Minkah Fitzpatrick. That was kind of an un-Steeler move. Okay. And my feeling is, I don't know what they would do, but I think Mike Tomlin will say, we got to do something and we have to make a legitimate move for a quarterback, whether it's trading a little bit or using a fewer resources for maybe to try to tempt Derek Carr and the Raiders. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if they made a bold move. I really wouldn't.
And, Peter, you say that the Steelers are indeed very, very tied to their tradition and the way they do things until they're not. You point to that Minkah
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick trade, that trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick, and it was just the year before that I remember I very personally was sort of pressing Mike Tomlin. I don't understand, why wouldn't you trade a one? Because the Steelers had missed on quite a few ones, and if you have
Right.
a known commodity, if you have a young guy out there, you know exactly what he is, and you can still get 2 or 3 years on a rookie contract. That's different than taking a flyer on a college kid. And Mike Tomlin at the time was adamant, we grow and develop our own. And then all of a sudden, a year later, they're making a move for somebody who truly is a game-changing safety. You know, Mike Tomlin loves Minkah Fitzpatrick. Minkah Fitzpatrick enables the Steelers to do things that they otherwise would not be able to do. You get it. Similarly, this year, the Steelers have never guaranteed money beyond the first year of a contract. A deal was not getting done with TJ Watt if they didn't do that. And they ultimately did indeed do that. So
Yeah.
you have to say never. But when you mentioned general manager Kevin Colbert, for a lot of years now, he said that he's here as long as Ben is here. And if this is the end for Ben, then does that mean there's one final draft for Kevin Colbert and then he also retires? I mean, that's a very, very likely possibility.
Interesting. One other Steeler related thing. Do you sense that they kind of roll their eyes at their shot at the playoffs? Or did you sense that they believe that there's a legitimate shot and who knows what might happen?
I think that they've been at it long enough that you never say never.
Yeah.
And so the one thing that they really have going for them is that they are playing the best possible opponent. And what I mean by that is they're playing an opponent that you can't help but not get up for. And that is their bitter rival, the Ravens.
Yeah.
So it's almost like if they were playing the Browns or if they were playing a Bengals team that was resting everybody, it might almost be a worse matchup because then there might be a little bit of a letdown, especially after the emotion of Monday night and saying goodbye to Ben Roethlisberger. But in this case, I mean, Mike Tomlin said it just earlier today. He said the Ravens bring out the best in us. And in general, that's what it is. So, you know, the Ravens and the Steelers are both still alive, albeit in a very, very, very small way. And, you know, both of them need the Colts, who are fighting for a playoff spot, to lose at the Jaguars. But hey, little known fact, the Jaguars have actually won 7 in a row at home against the Colts. So
that's crazy.
You never know. It's kind of a control what you can control thing.
Aditi, what do you think Ben Roethlisberger does with his life now?
It's funny. I had Marquise Pouncey and Ramon Foster on my little radio gig yesterday, and both of them said, go sit in a deer blind and golf and nothing else. He will stay in Pittsburgh. He said himself that he is in Pittsburgh now for life, but I don't see Ben Roethlisberger making the media rounds or becoming a talking head on some sports network. I think that he will be happy to sort of dial it back. And I think that that's part of why yesterday was so unbelievably emotional as well, because I don't know that there will be another experience. I mean, I don't know, what can you do in life unless you become maybe president, that you have that many people chanting your name, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's interesting. Two things about the Cleveland Browns.
Sure.
I realize if you love the Cleveland Browns today, your attitude about Baker Mayfield is off with his head. And you look at the last 6 games he's played this year, 53% completions, 9 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, just been really, really ineffective. Handed the game to Aaron Rodgers on a platter in Green Bay. Just a lot of dissatisfaction. But honestly, I'll tell you what I'd do if I'm the Browns. I'd bring him back for next year at $18.8 million and say, we're going to be joined at the hip this year, and who knows what the future holds, but let's do something that's great for the both of us. You do something great, and then we will essentially all be happy, whatever happens in 2023. Give me your gut feeling on what happens with Baker Mayfield.
So I think the idea of a show me year is kind of the best idea, because the Browns are not going to right now, Peter, commit $35 or $40 million to him. No, they're not.
Nor should they.
Right. I think that this year Baker was beset by injuries, which made things
Yep.
obviously very, very difficult. From the torn labrum to the shoulder fracture to the heel issue, all of that. But I also think that he was a little bit psychologically pressed, pushed, stressed by thinking that he was playing for a contract. And I think we all feel that way. I'll very frankly tell you that when I came to television, I started working under contracts, and contract years are always a little bit high stress. And
Yep.
you either play up, you're a Bud Dupree, let's say, 2 years ago, where you are just so enamored. This is my contract year, and I'm going to give you the best possible year that I possibly can. Or you feel a little bit tight. And I think that Baker starting the year with such high expectations with the roster around him, then getting hurt, and then feeling that he needed to press, to sort of prove his value and his worth, all of those factors together kind of just led to a less than ideal environment. So yes, I think he comes back next year on that option year. Yes, I think it's a show me year. Let's see how he psychologically handles that. And does he say, okay, I'm a gamer? And, Baker Mayfield's always been at his best when he believes that everybody is against him. And so if he believes that everybody is aligned against him and that nobody believes in him and they think that he's crap and he's not the future franchise quarterback of the Browns, then perhaps that's a good thing. And maybe he'll surprise everyone. I think that the Brown. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Peter.
No, I was going to say, I think it's a fantastic point. There are some people who absolutely love the us against the world attitude. It really, really reminds me of like a Bill Parcells team. He just loved it. He used to kid me not kid me. He was dead serious. I want you to pick against us. Every time I would see John Harbaugh for 5 years, you picked against us, didn't you? It wouldn't matter whether I said yes or no. He believed that I always picked against him. And those are the kind of things that, look, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. It seems totally third grade, but for a lot of people, it works. And that's what you've heard about Mayfield. And look, Andrew Berry, I think, is a really, really smart general manager. And this is not very hard to figure out. I think the only way that I might not do that is if somebody offered me a one for him. I might think about that if it was a significant one and there's a quarterback you love in this draft. But I don't think it's smart. I still think there's a chance that Baker Mayfield can be a franchise quarterback.
I think that the Browns offense has been racked by some lack of identity this year too. I am very much on the record. Nick Chubb is their best player. Nick Chubb should have the ball more. Nick Chubb should touch the ball more. We saw that in the Packers game. The
Packers game was, it was coaching malfeasance, and I like Kevin Stefanski, but not to run Nick Chubb at the end when he's averaging 8 yards a carry is just, it's insane. It's
ludicrous. Even yesterday, even last night in Pittsburgh, TJ Watt expressed surprise. Why did they go? They finally give Nick Chubb the ball and he rattles off a 32-yard run. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And then he's sidelined for long periods. And, a Brown spokesman tells me, no, he's not hurt. But then after the game, Kevin Stefanski says, well, he had a rib injury. Well, he came back and had a pretty darn tough stiff arm in the second half. So I just think that they've had the one thing that worked so well for Kevin Stefanski a year ago, Peter, was how level he was, how even he was, how calm he stayed. There was a week 1 blowout to the Ravens and they came back from that. There was a late season loss to the Jets and they came back from that. There was a heartbreaker on a Monday night against the Ravens when Lamar Jackson comes running out of the bathroom with a cape on his shoulders. And yet they rallied to make the playoffs for the first time. That evenness, that level-headedness served them so well. I wonder if this year a little more fire would have helped the Browns a bit, that if they needed to be a little bit more amped up. And Kevin Stefanski, I think, went away from the run several times this year before he should have. Yeah. And so, I'm asked this we talk about this a lot. The AFC North is obviously my wheelhouse. I know those 4 teams inside out. And so just a few days ago, I was asked who has the best roster. And I would say 1 to 53, the most talent is on the Browns.
Right.
But the best quarterback is on the Bengals.
Right.
And the most fight, never, ever, ever quit no matter what, is the Ravens.
Yeah.
And, so it's kind of, there's certainly a lot of talent with the Browns, and you've covered enough teams where you don't need a top 3 quarterback to be successful if
Right.
you have enough going around you and the scheme is working. And, in the Browns case, the play action pass game and the run game and all of that we saw a year ago, it just didn't work this year. So are they going to get back to that? Then yeah, Baker Mayfield is more than sufficient. Maybe he's not Joe Burrow, but he's more than sufficient when you've got everything else around him.
Aditi Kinkhabwala, really, really appreciate you taking the time. I've kept you too long. You have a very, very full life, and I appreciate you taking time with me today.
It is always my pleasure, and you are free to cut down whatever you thought was boring. I won't hold it against you.
Nothing. I think my favorite was going to San Antonio out of the clear blue sky. Those are the kind of things I love.
Well, I miss that city. I will tell you that. The Riverwalk and the margaritas, right?
Hey, all the best to you, Aditi. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me, and I'll see you soon somewhere along the way.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.